fans, and welcome to the post-day recap here on day number 1 of the SWC. But before we can even go further and talk about everything that happened in our day, got to give a few shout-outs to some of our sponsors: Advanced GG, Skulls, Monster Cat, GT Legal, City of Arlington, ESA, the esports arena here in Arlington, as well as i3D. Thank you so much for being our sponsors here at the Smite World Championships. I'm J-Mac, I got Frog, I got Gormizer, and I got Inbound joining me on the desk. Look, man, it's been a long day. I got to try and remember a few names out here. And speaking of our long day, let's kind of start all the way back at the very beginning. If you remember that far back, we can show a look at the bracket of all of our matchups today. Here's your easy reminder. Started out the day, Six Ferrymen 2-0 against the Solar Scares. You have the Jade Dragons, a 2-0 of their own. Leviathans, the only team to take us the full distance against Hex Mambo in a 2-1 for the SPL squad. And the Oni Warriors dethrone the reigning world champions in the Camelot Kings to finish out here on day number 1 of the Smite World Championships. And Frog, I kind of want to start over here in set number 1 with the Six Ferrymen. Talk about these guys real quick. Was this about expectations for this team? Was there anything that really stood out in this set to you for these squads?
I think the end result definitely matches expectations. We expected Six Ferrymen to move on. Some exciting things from the Solar Scarabs. They looked pretty solid early on in that game 1. Just took a minute for the Six Ferrymen rather to get their footing, but especially in game 2, they look dominant. Excited to see them tomorrow.
And Gormizer, we jump into our second set of the day, our first SPL versus SPL matchup. And this one seemed like it was going to be a lot closer than it ended up panning out. It was a Jade Dragons 2-0 over the Highland Ravens, and now showing that their opponent will be Six Ferrymen in that finals, in that semifinal, I should say. What is it for this Jade Dragons team that might need to be cleaned up going against the Ferrymen squad?
And you know what? I feel like it's a cop-out answer to say like some of their sieges, but that's what we've been saying all year. And admittedly, because that first game goes 45, right? And yeah, and when you look at some of the fights, the later portions of it, like this 2-0 does not really portray the way that set actually unfolded, right? Very lengthy, highly competitive game number 1. Dragons are able to win that through just sheer team fight. Game 2 was not their game until it was, right? Like, I mean, they do so well, the Ravens, I should say, do so well for what, 25 minutes, and then a little bit of a flub in mid, comes down to a 3v5 defense. Zap still gets a quadra, still does everything in his power to hold on to it, and then the Dragons win. So that 2-0 is a 2-0, but it's one of those things, like it's a asterisk. You must watch that to understand like the full depth. And I do think that there are a few things that the Ravens picked on that the Ferrymen will absolutely tear apart if the Dragons open it, and a lot of that's going to be late game sieges, anything like that.
And then Inbound, we eclipse into the second half of our day, and our only set that goes the full distance, Leviathans and Hex Mambo. Felt like the Leviathans may have gotten caught off guard a little bit against Hex Mambo, especially in that game number 1. April gets off to a really rip-roaring start. Or no, sorry, April. It was Hex Mambo. Johnny goes absolutely insane on that one. Still, long day. I'm mixing some of the players up here. It's okay.
Hey, but I understand
at the same time,
very well.
Look, both of the junglers for these SCC teams going absolutely wild in their matchups, especially Johnny, the Camazots in game number 1, really did feel like the Leviathans just got caught off guard entirely.
What is it with these EU SEC junglers that are just phenomenal? Like we got like Adapting, April, we've got Johnny. Like they're all just phenomenal players. And going to the set, I mean, if you just watched game 1, you're probably walking away thinking the Mambo won this, but fortunately that game 2, very back and forth. It ends up going in the way of the Levi's. And maybe we don't talk about game 3 because that was probably the most done dirty game of the entire tournament. That was a 15-0, like 25-minute absolute domination. But other than that, I thought the Mambo played well in game 1 and game 2. So, I mean, shout out them. They weren't really expected to kind of compete. It's kind of the same as the Ferrymen Scarabs. It was kind of expected that the SPL team would win. But Mambo showed that they have fight, that they have that potential. Levi's are just a little bit too good.
Yeah, I think Levi's third game, you kind of heard in the post-game interview with, I'm going to remove a few of the expletives that Shinta said, but this is what we expected to do against this team, and was able to find that win in the last one. And then we move into our final quarterfinal of the match, the reigning world champions and the Camelot Kings up against the team that Genetics left now to move to with the Oni Warriors and Gormizer. This matchup looked like it was going to be going to the third game, but the Camelot Kings just falling a little bit too far behind in that second game. The Oni Warriors cleaning things up.
Yeah, I was honestly kind of, I want to say pleasantly surprised. It's unfortunate again for the Kings to exit in 0-2, but it was expected based on how they played last week. They did not play the way they played last week. They did not play the way they played 2 months ago when we saw them. It was really, again, a breath of fresh air from the Kings, and we got that revitalization. But game one, goes the distance. Warriors, they're good at late game team fights, and very specifically, hey, there's a good Yamoja player there in Genetics. That one seals the deal. In game two, I have to give a lot of credit, I think, over to Pagon, who created a lot of space, Panatom, who creates a lot of space, the front line, again, just the four of them making it so that Net could just deal damage from as far back as possible without worrying about anything, and then having this wide zone in front of you. It was not easy for them, but it looked so good when we get to watch the highlights.
And that wraps up day number 1 of the SWC, but we still have plenty more action to go. We can actually kind of take a look ahead and see what's going to be going on for the remainder of our weekend. For, the day number 2 of SWC, we had those semifinals that are going to be taking place. As you can already see, Styx Ferryman, Jade Dragons will be our first semifinal. Best of 5 for those matches, by the way, tomorrow. Leviathans and Warriors will be our second one. But we still have other stuff going on. Year 11 update show. You're going to see a first look at what's going to be happening next year in Smite, as well as our cosplay showcase happening sandwiched in the middle of those semifinals, and we still have a great remainder of our weekend to go as well. We get to see which 2 teams are going to go over to that grand finals. And remember that TBA, that to be announced, that's been sitting on the schedule for so long? Well, after our keynote today, over on Sunday, we'll have the Smite 2 Dev Insight going on. So if you want to hear more about that, make sure to tune in there. But make sure that you are back here, whether you're watching it from home, whether you're watching in the stadium, make sure that you are back here, same time, same place, over on twitch.tv/SmackDown. On behalf of myself, all the casters, everyone behind the scenes, thanks for watching for day 1, and we'll see you tomorrow for day number 2.